Welcome into week 7 of the PFF betting show. As always, I'm here with Mason Cameron in Linsey and Judah Fortgang. We're coming off I was at the Thursday night football game here in Cincinnati. A fun game, back and forth game. And honestly, I'm interested what your guys' takeaways are. Mine is that the Steelers defense, all the issues we saw with them towards the tail end of last season, if they're not able to generate pressure, the back end can get carved up. And we're coming off 2 games, really strong showings against Minnesota, against Cleveland. Looked a lot different last night against Cincinnati and a talented receiving core.
Yeah, something that I learned is that when you live 2 blocks away from the stadium, it really is a bit of a spoiler for if teams convert on third down and whatnot, because you can hear the stadium absolutely explode. So, we heard a lot of that last night quite a bit. Jamar Chase peppered with targets. Joe Flacco had a great game. Jamar, 23 targets, 16, 161, a touchdown. Those are big-time performances. We were talking about it before the show. He's got to be the happiest receiver in the NFL right now because he is just getting absolutely peppered with the ball.
Yeah, I hate to do this to you, Ben, but I think we got to talk about TJ Watt. It's kind of been somewhat of a decline. He had 2 pressures last night. And I think when you also look at defensive play in general and defensive line, it also it has an effect on your other rushers too. And I think it's been kind of shocking, honestly, the fall off kind of across the board on the Pittsburgh defensive line. And then they're playing a ton of man coverage. If they're not getting home, kind of as you said, if they're not getting home with the rush, this is a Steelers secondary that is extremely vulnerable. And Darius Slay he's getting up there, and it's showing. Jalen Ramsey also, his on ball stuff is pretty good. The separation numbers do not look pretty at all. I would be somewhat concerned. I'd be very concerned about the Steelers defense in kind of from the preseason. It looked like this might be the year they finally put the talent that they had on paper to have a truly dominant defense, and it does not seem to be the case.
Yeah, there was a lot of free release, short to intermediate stuff for the Cincinnati wide receivers, and that when guys are open quickly at the rate that the Bengals wide receivers were last night, that's going to hurt the pass rush numbers too. Obviously, the Steelers front is really talented, and we've seen it the last couple of weeks. They've been able to impact quarterbacks, but when Jamar Chase is wide open on 20 plays and he's getting targeted in 2.4 seconds, that's you're going to limit the amount of time you can get home. So the Steelers front, with the way that the secondary is played last night, had to be really dominant, right? For that defense to look good, they had to be getting home in 2 seconds consistently, and they just weren't. So
yeah, you hit the nail on the head right there. Is that the Bengals were getting the ball out so quickly that it was really difficult, especially for a team like the Steelers, where they've been doing pass stunts at a top 5 rate in the NFL this season, and it's really helped them free up a lot of good rushes. And that just really wasn't the case for them tonight. They couldn't really get there because you can't really stunt and expect to get to the quarterback in under 2.5 seconds. So, hats off to the Bengals, hats off to Joe Flacco. They really did have a great game plan in this one and just executed it really well. And like you say, when you can get to Jamar Chase open in under 2.5 seconds and just deliver the football, it makes everything else run a lot easier. You could see where they were able to actually get the running game going, even though they've struggled mightily, getting the ground game going all season, and they just were able to do it. And it's because you have to pull people out of the box, and you really have to dedicate more resources to trying to find ways to stop that receiving game for sure.
Yeah, they were having success with the sneak attack, Samaje Perine second and long runs, the sneak attack, Joe Flacco read option, having some success with those types of plays last night. So bad night for me as a Steelers fan. It was a pretty good betting night. Pat Freiermuth, shout out Pat Freiermuth, anytime touchdown, plus 650. That came through. He's had a lot of success against the Bengals the last couple of years. I know he's kind of fallen out of that tight end rotation a little bit, but especially down Calvin Austin with how thin they are at wide receiver, they're just getting 2-3 tight ends on the field a ton. So we will jump into the rest of the week 7 slate here, starting with the game markets. Before we do that, if you would like access to some of this data, the grades, that's all available in Premium Stats with a PFF Plus subscription. You'll also get access to the player prop tool, which is doing pretty well. Like we're tracking the results on all of these, and the results have been strong. Hit rate, ROI. So if you would like access to that, good research tool as well. You can see all the matchup data. You can line chop. You can see hit rates just overall against similar defenses using some of the work our data science team has done. That's all available in the player prop tool in the PFF app with a PFF Plus subscription. And before we jump into the game markets, if anyone has a player prop that they like this week, feel free to throw it in the chat, and we'll kind of call some of those out towards the end of the show. All right, let's jump into it. Judah, what do you like this week in terms of game markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think Mason beat me maybe to my favorite game market, but another spot I really like is Carolina money line this week, or if you want to get the minus 1.5 as well. I think I came on last week and talked about planting the flag and saying if this Carolina run defense slowed down the Dallas rushing offense, I was ready to buy into that kind of short-term trend. And over the last month of the season, they are allowing an 18% rush success rate, which is by far the best in the NFL. That is obviously it's a small sample, but a truly, truly dominant rate of success running the ball, stopping the run. And if you look at the Jets offense, I mean, it is entirely designed off the rush success. And obviously it's a different matchup when you have a quarterback who is as mobile as Justin Fields. But I think this is a Carolina team that is going to have the advantage here in stopping the run. I think this might be the best run defense in football. Certainly they kind of performed that way against what was previously the number one rush success rate team in Dallas. And then if you're going to have Justin Fields in pure dropback situations, down Garrett Wilson, I mean, they've got absolutely no one to throw to. I just don't see the Jets passing offense really being able to take advantage of kind of the weakness in the Carolina pass defense. So I think this is a huge mismatch on that side of the ball. And the Jets have just not been able to stop anyone. I think I would not discount Jalen Coker coming back. I think this is we'll see the allotment of snaps he has. I don't know if it's necessarily this week, but going forward, this was a guy who was really terrific for them down the stretch last year, and I think really adds an important secondary option behind Ted McMillan. And then obviously this is a Carolina team that has been running the ball at will, and I think it's one thing to do it against the Dolphins, who are seemingly allowing any of us could run for 100 yards. It appears against them.
I think you got to calm down with the any of us.
You're right. You're right. I would literally not be able to cross the line of scrimmage. That is certainly true. But point being that they are rushing the ball at will. I don't see why the Jets are going to be able to take them out of that. And I think it's also been able to kind of set up a more efficient passing offense for. Look at me. I feel like I'm a football commentator talking about the run, setting up the pass. I got to take my analytics hat and throw it away, I guess. But I think this is an offense that should be able to move the ball at will against the Jets, who are bleeding explosive plays. They can't stop the run. I do not see these two teams as in the same tier. Certainly not if Carolina is going to be able to stop the Jets running offense.
Yeah, this is a great Coker spot if he plays, right? I've kind of been on wide receiver twos, good wide receiver twos against the Jets, specifically wide receiver twos who are good against man coverage, and that describes Jalen Coker if he's playing a full allotment of snaps in this matchup, with Sauce likely being on Ted for the majority of this game. Counterpoint to some of the Jets offense stuff, they've been kind of average passing offense and success rate from a clean pocket. The Panthers are dead last in pressure rate. So Fields is a quarterback who can create his own pressure even when the defense is not generating pressure. And yes, they're without Garrett Wilson. I don't love this Jets passing offense for obvious reasons, but I think this is a spot where I'm probably going to have some interest in Fields passing overs. His line's 170. The Panthers really good against the run. And that the limited pass rush from Carolina in a pass funnel, I kind of like Fields passing in this spot, but I agree with you generally. The Panthers should win this game.
Yeah, I mean, It's one thing also to say, like, this Jets offense absolutely struggled against a really top tier Broncos defense. But, as you said, Judah, we've seen a lot of really good stuff from the Carolina run defense too. So it really does put this Jets defense sort of on the back burner. And this game script could really get out of hand for them to be able to sort of run the ball, or the Jets to run the ball and really get, into positions where they want to succeed. So.
All right, let's kick it over to you, Mason. It seems like Judah's also on this one. What do you like this week?
Judah's a smart guy, so I feel even more empowered by this decision to take Atlanta on the money line. The spread has actually started to move back away from, or towards the Atlanta. They were plus 2.5. I think they're around 2 and even 1.5 in some spots. So you guys, if you want to take the spread, make sure you guys go get on that right now. But I think you can be comfortable taking the money line too. The tough thing right now is just with San Francisco, the 49ers have to be cursed. I just don't really know any other way to essentially say that at this point. Add Fred Warner to the growing list of injuries, and this loss for Fred Warner just cannot be understated. He's not only the Niners' best defender, he's the highest graded defender in the NFL, period. He's the only defender with a 91 plus run D and coverage grade. Those are just massive metrics, and this is going to be a massive hit for this defense. When we talk about how this defense has looked with Fred Warner, the unit's right around about league average in a bunch of key metrics like EPA per play, yards per play allowed. They're about 20th in EPA per play, 15th in yards per play allowed. Those numbers drop off massively when they don't have Fred Warner on the field. And now that has been sort of limited. We saw quite a bit of it last week. But their ability to find stops just really plummets. They're 32nd in EPA per play when Fred Warner's not on the field, and they are 32nd in yards per play when Fred Warner's not on the field. So that's going to put this team in a very, very tough spot when they're trying to check Bijan Robinson, who has been absolutely phenomenal. 419 all-purpose over the last 2 games, 5.8 yards per carry, 11 runs of 10 or more yards. He has just been absolutely bonkers, and he is a receiving threat out of the backfield, which is going to be something we'll talk about more when I get to my same game parlay too, which, I'm going back to the well with some Falcons same game parlays because it did us pretty well a few weeks ago, and so we're gonna dive back into that one. But another thing just being is that Michael Penix Jr., Drake London, that connection is back to what we were seeing at the end of 2024. London, since week 4, he's been targeted on 36.4% of his routes. That's the highest in the NFL. He's one of 4 players with more than 4 yards per route run over that span since week 4. In San Francisco in coverage versus wide receivers, they allow the 4th highest open target percentage. So I think we're going to see a lot of clean looks for Drake London. And then also just as a whole, this offense has just taken such a step forward because of those 3 guys, but everybody is really buying in and they're playing a lot better because of it. Since that week 4 game, they're 3rd in average yards per play. They're top 5 in EPA per play and success rate. And when we see San Francisco, they're likely going to be getting George Kittle back and maybe Brock Purdy. I know that situation's still a little bit more up in the air, but I don't think that this matches up quite as well for Atlanta to get those guys back. Now, George Kittle is an excellent player, and whoever's throwing him the ball, he's still going to be somebody that you have to game plan around to stop. But when we talk about how this Atlanta team has played solid against tight ends, they've allowed the fewest receptions and the second fewest yards per coverage target allowed 2 throws to the tight end. So I really think that this is a spot that Atlanta can get out to a big lead and really, put the pressure on the 49ers. I think this might be one of those games where they probably should have leaned more towards. I know that the line is creeping down, but I'm surprised that it opened as high as 2.5.
Yeah, and the favorites in the last, I think it's 8 primetime games I've seen, 7 of the 8 have lost outright. So we're on a little heater for underdogs in primetime right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if the Falcons close as favorites here, depending on some of the injury news. And I think, Mason, you covered most of this, but also even before Fred Warner, since Nick Bosa's gone down, this defense has been maybe the worst in the NFL. They really have no pass rush to speak of, and then I think you add, obviously, you highlighted the injury of Fred Warner. This might be the worst defense in football right now. And the other piece we didn't cover is the Falcons' defense has been terrific. They've allowed the second fewest yards per dropback, and I think, again, you want to talk about like a short-term trend that you didn't know whether to believe in, like slowing down the Bills to the degree they did. I think is a kind of large indicator of the defense this is. And I don't think the market has quite adjusted to that. And Michael Penix is the type of quarterback who, the Achilles heel for him right now has been like a complete inability to create when the play breaks down. And I just don't think the play is going to be breaking down very often against San Francisco that just has no pass rush and a secondary that's really been struggling. I'm all over the Falcons in the spot as well.
Yeah, the other aspect I like for Atlanta is they've been blitzing a ton. And they did in that Monday night game against the Bills and had a lot of success with it. Right? They were getting after Allen, and he didn't have many solutions. The 49ers have struggled against the blitz this year, passing the ball. Specifically, they're 27th in EPA per play. This is a thing with Kyle Shanahan tree offenses where the play is the play. Right? You're not really getting to the line of scrimmage and making adjustments. The offensive line for San Francisco, not all that great. The quarterback's banged up. Somewhat limited mobility. The receiving core is kind of in shambles right now. Yes, they could get George Kittle back. That'll certainly help. But Ricky Pearsall's still DNP. Right? They're still not nearly at 100% strength in the receiving core. So that combined with a team that wants to kind of speed the quarterback up and force him to make early decisions with a receiving core that might not necessarily be creating separation early in the play like we typically see from the San Francisco offense. There's a lot of things that point to Atlanta in this matchup.
We talk about injuries to the receiver. Juwan Jennings,
Yeah.
might as well just tick all of the above on the injury report. This guy every single week is missing a bunch of practice with a number of injuries and, ribs and ankle and all sorts of things. So it's a tough look when that's really been your most consistent producer in the receiver room, and he's really banged up. And it brings you to the point where, you've hit on a couple of times this year about how we've had points where Christian McCaffrey, obviously he's a really great receiver out of the backfield, but he's had to be their number one target in a number of situations. So that puts you behind the back burner. I know they've played really well in a lot of situations because it feels like every single week we have to talk about these 49ers injuries, and they played decently well up to this point, but there's obviously has to be a breaking point, and I think that Fred Warner is definitely that breaking point. You have no Fred Warner, no Bosa. It's just going to be really hard to keep teams within competitive games.
Yeah, Juwan Jennings on the injury report with ankle, rib, shoulder. Anytime you get multiple commas in the injury report, that's probably not a great sign that he's playing at full strength. All right, we'll round out the game markets with mine, and I'm going to Cleveland. Cleveland minus 2.5, and I think here the first thing I'll start with is the weather. Right, the weather report for this game looks pretty gnarly. It's wind expected, potential for 25 to 35 mile per hour gusts. You're going to have rain. To be determined what the intensity of the rain is, but there will be rain in this game. And I think that honestly plays into Cleveland. I know there's all the narratives about Tua on the road in bad weather, maybe overblown, but it's definitely not good for Miami. The Browns want to be able to dominate a team on the ground. We've seen them feed Quinshon Judkins outside of last week against Pittsburgh, where they got into a situation where they were playing from behind and they got Jerome Ford on the field more. But Quinshon Judkins' rushing yardage line is 96.5 yards.
Obscene.
It's insane. And I think it's warranted. We've seen how bad this Dolphins run defense is. They're allowing 4.8 yards per run play. That's including penalty yardage on stuff like holdings. That is third worst in the NFL. And I think Judkins in a bad weather game, right? The Browns are just going to feed him. The Dolphins are also 30th in the NFL in yards per play allowed on throws less than 10 yards downfield. They have not done a good job of rallying to the football and containing these underneath throws. and that's the Browns passing game. If you saw Dylan Gabriel's passing chart against the Steelers last week, like that's what they're going to do. They're going to throw underneath. So both of those areas, the Dolphins defense really struggles. And then the Browns defense at home is just a group against this Miami offense without Tyreek Hill. They're great run defense this year. Like, teams have not been able to get much on the ground against them. And if you're forcing Tua into a situation where he's going to have to win this game with his arm, without his top receiver, against a good defense, in bad weather, like, that's just something that I want to bet against. To the Browns defense point, there are 2 games at home this year. They were technically home in the game in Europe, but not counting that. But there are 2 games at home this year. 17 points allowed to the Bengals, which is honestly overstating the Bengals' offensive success in that game. They only had 141 yards, and 10 points allowed to the Packers. I think this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game, and honestly, I don't see the Dolphins putting up many points in this game at all.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I think even another way of attacking is Dylan Gabriel under passing yards. It's at I think 180 right now, which obviously is a tiny number, but this is a guy averaging like 4.8 yards per attempt against. We just saw the Steelers defense get eviscerated by the Joe Flacco led Bengals, but I don't see any volume accumulating here. I think this is both teams are going to keep the ball on the ground. I think the Browns run defense has kind of shown their ability to stop him, and then just the Browns are going to run the football, I think, all game. I love that angle, and I think the Gabriel stuff is decently correlated with it as well.
Yeah, and you know, to that point too, just the weather makes this game just obscenely ugly. 37.5 might seem like a very low number, but I think you could even potentially play it on the under there, because it's gonna look really, really ugly. We're gonna get to the end of this thing and be like, wow, that was a brutal football game for those guys to be out there playing, especially if the weather, keys up like we're expecting it to. This line for the total has dropped quite a bit throughout the week with the developing news of the weather and what it's going to look like. So, that's going to be something to keep an eye out for as we get closer to game time, because that will dictate a lot of what we see in this one for sure.
Yeah, yesterday, 2 days ago, I parlayed the -2.5 under 40.5. And I think that's how the Browns are going to win. Low scoring game, win by at least a field goal. So I like even to your point, it's moved down to 37.5 or whatever it is, but I still like the under. All right, prop bets. Mason, what do we got here?
Well, also make sure you guys get your picks into the chat so we can do prop culture. We're going to parlay them all together, but we're going to start off with a good one. And we were talking about it. Judah said that I jumped in and I got that Atlanta line first. Well, I've got a bone to pick with Gordon, who also jumped into our best bets of the week with my favorite of the week, which was Jaden Daniels over 227.5 passing yards. So big shout out to Gordon over there. I love his read on that one, because Daniels has missed his passing yardage over last week in the pouring rain by single digits. And this is a spot that I really think that he's going to be able to excel in. You're in a dome, and frankly, in that game, he had a couple of tough drops due to the weather that really would have just put him over that mark. And if he had gone over, that would have been his third over in 4 games. And like I said, he's going to be playing in a dome this week, so we don't have to worry about the weather. And there's just a lot of shootout potential in this one, obviously. Just to sort of paint it in broad strokes, these 2 coverage units have very much struggled at times, both in the bottom 5 in coverage grade and pass yards per attempt. Daniels is absolutely capable of exploiting Dallas in coverage. The PFF key insight of this week that I just absolutely loved was Dallas runs the highest rate of zone coverage in the NFL, and Daniels ranks 5th in passing grade versus zone coverage. Just since last season, he has an 81.4 grade. So he really has played extremely well when he can pick apart zone coverages. And another angle that I'm really going to be taking here is that he has absolutely doused open coverages. So when we look at his open coverage cell passing grades, it's 90.7. He's got 12 big time throws to 4 turnover worthy plays and an 83.8 adjusted completion percentage. And now Dallas runs sort of a mix there, but they've run quite a bit of open coverages. And I think that when you see 2 high safeties, you're going to get an opportunity for Daniels to really pick them apart. And the biggest thing here for me is that Daniels has this ability to extend the play. He has the 4th highest passing grade when the time to throw exceeds 3 seconds since 2024. That's an 83.5, and that's going to put pressure on defenses to cover longer. And when we look at Dallas and how they've struggled on those throws that are extended in time, 78.7 open target percentage, a 139.3 passer rating allowed, and an 11.2 yards per coverage target. Those first 2 marks are dead last in the NFL, and that last one is bottom 5. So this really is going to put Dallas in a tough spot. And this is one of those games where they are going to miss Micah Parsons. I know that there's a lot of, narrative talk on Twitter and whatnot of, Micah Parsons in Green Bay and what's he really been able to do. But, he's still performing incredibly well in a lot of advanced metrics. And this Dallas defense is going to struggle without his presence in the pass rush this week. This is one of those type of games that's really going to affect them.
Yeah, this Dallas defense is really bad. Like that's basically the extent of my analysis. We've
picked on them a lot.
Yeah, to the point I picked on them last week with over in Carolina, Dallas, and that came through pretty easily. To your point specifically against zone, I think this is a Washington passing attack, especially with some of the injuries they have at wide receiver, like Terry McLaurin. I don't know what the latest is, but that's still up in the air for this week as far as what I've seen most recently.
He practiced.
Yeah.
I think he practiced, but then he was downgraded the next day. I think we'll have to see what it comes out with today. So
yeah. But it's without him and with Debo banged up and with Noah Brown out, if they're playing against a sticky man coverage team, I like this passing offense less, but I think they do a pretty good job of finding space and attacking space, but specifically with Jane Daniels' creation ability, where these receivers can find holes in zone. And I will tell you, the holes in zone against this Dallas defense, they're going to be there. So I'm not super worried about the receiving core being a little bit banged up for Washington.
Yeah, and I think makes a great point that the holes in the zone are going to be there, and the likelihood and the size of them do increase as Jaden Daniels' ability to create those. I would just very quickly say, on the other, just a point, to the over is that this game environment, obviously the total is extremely high here. Dallas also, I think, should be able to move the ball absolutely at will against a dreadful Washington defense. This is I think a terrific offensive environment for Daniels to have passing yards, and then just in general, in terms of the outcome of this game, it almost seems like a team that can generate a turnover or 2 is going to be the one that actually comes out on top, because I don't see how Washington's going to stop Dallas.
Yeah, and Washington plays fast, right? It's a lot of hurry up type stuff, and they do tend to have these longer drawn out drives because they're not super explosive. But if you get the fast pace coupled with more explosive plays from Washington, that could lead to a blow up spot for offense in this game. All right, Judah, we going back to the well with 50 receiving yards for a Broncos receiver?
That's exactly right, against the New York team. This time just on the other side of the pond. Yeah, to be fair here, a lot of these prop lines and alts, a lot of injury information has made it that our pool for selection here is relatively thin. But yeah, I'm taking the Troy Franklin alts here. The Giants lead the NFL in man coverage rate. We talk about this all the time, and as Ben just alluded to, the talent matters a lot more. You're much more attacking a matchup than you are kind of scheming up space. And the Giants corners have certainly struggled in preventing separation. I think that a lot has to do with their defensive performance so far. And Troy Franklin has just an absurd, we call it threat rate or targets per route run. He's generating a target on very close to 40% of the routes he's running against man coverage. Giants are also playing a ton of single high coverage. That is also an area where Troy Franklin has gotten kind of the lion's share of the workload. And I think it's interesting because the Broncos in the first half last week threw the ball like 20 something times. And we're kind of moving the ball
Can
at
we,
will.
can we
and
talk
then,
about how infuriating that game was? I was on the Broncos in Circa. I was on some Knicks passing stuff, and then Jets doing absolutely nothing. And then in the second half, the Broncos just stopped passing the ball. It was just like running to no avail the entire second half.
And it's so funny because, Judah mentioned the over on the attempts, and I know you wrote about that. I obviously was on the under on the attempts on on my same game parlay, just thinking that the game was going to go a little bit of a different direction. I thought that this Broncos team was going to be able to get out to a big lead and just sort of run the ball, and that just crumbled in the second half. It was just such a weird back and forth. The under ended up hitting, but it shouldn't have, by any means. He should have.
I thought the over was going to cash in the first half, to be honest. The way
it was looking like it. I was like, oh man, I'm going to lose this on the Bo Nix volume because he just decides to throw every single down, and then they just forgot that that's what they were going to do. So
it's, as someone who did not have much betting action on the game, but as a professional kind of fan of the Shield, this was an embarrassing game for the NFL. There was the 3rd and 10 fullback run is just insulting to fans everywhere, and it was really tough. But that is to say, I still think this is a Denver offense, which is going to be looking to pass the ball. I'm not going to read into that second half game plan and of whatever that was. I think just if anything, it was ultra conservatism, considering the Jets were moving backwards every time they dropped back to pass. But Troy Franklin is just, I think, in a really terrific spot here against this Giants defense, and I think they're going to be throwing a bunch.
Judah, I have over 21.5 completions for Bo Nix this week. I'm learning from you. We're learning from our mistakes here, so we're gonna get in there. So
Broncos country, let's ride.
Let's ride.
You really set me up there.
Yeah, in general, I think this is a good spot for kind of the double fade with the Broncos looking terrible against the Jets, and then the Giants coming out and beating the Eagles on Thursday Night Football last week. I was on the Eagles. I probably read too much. We talked about it last week on the show. We probably read too much into Jackson Dart's lack of success in his first 2 starts, and he played really well against Philadelphia. He created the scrambling aspect he adds, I think, is real. But the Eagles' defense, 1, has not been nearly the same as it was last season, and 2, they were down Jalen Carter, and Quinyon Mitchell got hurt early in that game. So that number 2 cornerback spot that we've been talking about as an issue all year, that was doubled with Adoree Jackson and Keely Ringo both on the field. So this is still a Giants receiving core that has no real options. Maybe Darius Slayton comes back this week. I haven't really checked what the practice report looks like for him. But against the Denver defense that has been awesome, it is I forget who I saw this from, or maybe it was Rich Eisen on the call. There was 4 games this year where a team has allowed less than 10 first downs. The Broncos have 3 of them. This is a very good defense that is clearly has an upper hand in the matchup against this Giants team in the pass game and the run game, I would say. So if you get limited offensive plays from the Giants, similar to what we saw from the Jets last week, and the Broncos actually capitalize, which I expect them to bounce back a little bit here in a favorable matchup, it sets up well for some Broncos pass game stuff, I think.
No faith in the Lil Jordan Humphrey revenge game?
Revenge. I honestly could not have told you that Lil Jordan Humphrey was on the Broncos. I recall him as a Saint and only a Saint.
He's a Sean Payton guy. He'll be anywhere that Sean Payton's coaching, for sure.
That's right. I was just gonna say, just talking about this game very, very quickly, and even to respond to your point, Ben, about Jackson Dart. I also don't want to over-index on last week. He was terrific scrambling last week. But that very, easily against this Broncos defense, which is just going to generate a ton of pressure. Right? If your pressure to sack rate is not 10%, but gets a little bit closer to where it was to 30%, we've got some major problems. So I think this would really be a very telling game about who Jackson Dart is as a quarterback. I'm not expecting him to have a terrific game, but even to kind of not be a complete disaster here would, I think, be kind of a major upgrade for Dart going forward.
All right, and we'll round out the prop bets with mine. Looking to go back-to-back weeks that I've hit the game market and the prop bet. So looking to make it a three-peat here. Patrick Mahomes under 29.5 rushing yards. I think this is Patrick Mahomes more than most quarterbacks is, and you can see on the PFF app it's already moved down to 26.5. So get it in quick. Patrick Mahomes is a quarterback who, like, the game situation and him needing to run more than most is like really telling for how much he's going to scramble, I think. And the stats kind of back that up this year. If you just look simply at his rushing yards per game this season, versus the Chargers, 57. Versus the Eagles in week 2, 66. Versus the Giants and Ravens in weeks 3 and 4, 2 and 5. Like, those were the Giants game, come in as favorites, control the game pretty comfortably for most. The Ravens game, obviously, they blew the Ravens out. Didn't have to run, didn't run. The last 2 weeks against Jacksonville and Detroit, tighter games against better teams, back up to 60 and 32 rushing yards. And if you just look at his scramble rate this season, when the Chiefs are tied or trailing, 13.2%. When the Chiefs are leading, 6.3%. Right, so all of that goes to say they're coming in as big favorites, double-digit favorites against a very bad Raiders team. They get Rashee Rice back. Talked last week, big miss on the Titans SGP last week. Calvin Ridley got hurt, but I don't think that mattered. They were not doing anything anyways. But talked in that about how bad this Raiders coverage unit has been. That's still true. The Chiefs passing offense has looked great the last 3 weeks. Like, they're back up to being first in success rate. They're get Rashee Rice back. This is a bad Raiders coverage unit. The Raiders, they have Max Crosby, but they're still bottom half of the league in pressure rate. I think this is a situation where Patrick Mahomes, even when the Raiders do get pressure, he's going to be able to find open guys. He's going to be looking to pass and get the more traditional ground game going with Pacheco, who honestly Pacheco's looked pretty good the last couple weeks on limited volume. So I don't think this is a spot where Mahomes is going to have to use his legs much.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because it's just like at times he's like their leading rusher because they really just sort of refuse to do designed runs to a significant degree, and that's really been a detriment to them at some points. But, you know, he has been able to run, but it's like you said, is that he's not going to if he doesn't have to. So it just only makes sense that in this matchup that he could just pick apart a Raiders defense that is just absolutely struggling against pretty much everybody not named Cam Ward. So
I think maybe this is like the ultimate. First off, do you remember the thing on like Chiefs couldn't cover for years at a time, and they've been winning with margin. I mean, obviously there's a huge spread here, but the Chiefs offense with Rashee Rice back, it seems like we can be getting back to the like real, 2022 and earlier Chiefs offenses. And like, I don't know why the Chiefs would be running design runs with Patrick Mahomes in October in a game like as a 12.5 point favorite. Like, that's the exact spot they won't run in. And I think Ben's read on this is spot on.
Well, good. Don't need to do much more there. And before we jump into the SGPs, let's talk about preparing for your kid's future with Fabric by Gerber Life. As parents, we do everything we can to set our kids up for a successful future, academics, team sports, college admissions. But what about getting started financially when they're out on their own? Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With a kid's investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids can't invest when they're minors, a UGMA Kids Investment Account allows you to invest on their behalf now and gives their investments more time to grow. Funds can be used for nearly anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use the funds for their first home, new car, or even to start a business. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right. I need to get on the board, and hopefully this is the week. I don't have – we'll start out with mine. This is – Judah alluded to it earlier, but we're recording this on Friday morning. There is still a lot of prop lines not out with injury-related news. So kind of finding an SGP angle at this point was tough. So I'm going to go a little bit general, and then I'll maybe tweet out the actual SGP I choose once the lines are out. But the angle I'm looking to attack is in the London game, Rams passing against the Jaguars. And I think it's for a few reasons. The Jaguars have been a pretty big pass funnel defense. They're 6.7 yards allowed per pass play. That's 27th in the NFL. 2.9 yards allowed per run play. That's 5th. They've gotten a lot of turnovers, so some of the EPA numbers look pretty favorable for them. But in terms of just allowing yardage through the air, they've been towards the bottom of the league defensively there. And this is a Rams offense that, yes, they're probably down Puka Nacua. He hasn't been ruled out yet, which is why some of these lines and alt lines for the Rams receivers aren't out yet. But I still think Matthew Stafford can have success, and you get a little bit of opportunity to attack higher alts for receivers with the massive target vacuum that is Puka Nacua out of the lineup, and it being spread around a little bit more. So I'm mainly looking at Stafford passing yards, alt lines, Devontae Adams reception alts, and Tutu Atwell receiving yard alts. And I think Jordan Whittington's going to step into the Puka role. But I kind of like the spot here for Tutu to rip off a big one. We saw it happen already on the game-winning touchdown against the Colts. There was another play against the Eagles where a big touchdown was there on a seam ball, and Stafford just missed him. Tutu has an 18.1 yard average depth of target this year on 11 targets, including plays nullified by penalty. That's 6th among receivers. And Jacksonville has given up 14 deep completions this year, which is second most in the NFL behind only the aforementioned Cowboys. So, this is a spot where I think Stafford is going to take a few shots to Tutu deep. Tutu probably on the field a little bit more with Puka out. And the Devontae Adams reception piece, Puka has a 36% target rate, targeted on 36% of his routes. It's highest in the NFL. And Stafford has historically been a guy who, his top guy, he's going to feed them the ball a lot. And his top guy is Devontae Adams in this spot. You saw last week against the Ravens, the stat line wasn't great, but Devontae was getting peppered with targets. There were just a couple plays that they weren't connecting on. His reception line, at least early, is set at around 6.5 at some books. So, I think this is a spot where we could see a 10 reception game for Devontae. And Jacksonville might be able to punch back a little bit, which could push some of the Stafford passing stuff. Devin Lloyd also out. So lines aren't out yet, but I'm looking to attack Rams pass game.
Yeah, and with you made the point with some 2-2 alts and things like that. You could tell that Stafford really does value this guy when he feels like there's not somebody on the defense that can check him, and they get into certain looks. I mean, they threw him the same look twice last week in 2 plays in a row, hoping to exploit the exact same coverage that they were looking at. So that's one of those things that when you don't have that big, like you said, when you don't have that big target vacuum, that void that is Puka Nacua just sucking in every single target that comes his way, it really does open up for a lot of really talented players on this Rams offense for sure. So I'm definitely with you there. And the Jags do have some things that they need to figure out back in coverage. It was something that we talked about, I think, a couple weeks ago about, they do have some pretty gaudy turnover numbers, but it's just not really a margin that they can continue to really excel in. And I think that this is going to be another one of those games that you're not going to see a ton of takeaways because Stafford doesn't really, push the ball into danger when he doesn't have to. He's going to feed the targets to guys that he feels like are open for sure.
It's also Stafford is one of the quarterbacks in the NFL. If Tutu has a step deep, I trust Stafford more than most quarterbacks to just rip it in there, like with no hesitation.
Yeah,
he's like number one in deep accuracy basically every year.
Yeah,
he just drops it in the bucket. It's pretty.
It's crazy.
Do you have any takes on this Jags team generally, Judah? I feel like they're one of the more difficult teams in the NFL to figure out.
I feel like for like 5 years now, the Jags are voodoo. I think there was like major questions about Trevor Lawrence because if you fast forward pre like a bunch of his injuries, like they were 8-3 before that Monday Night Football game against the Bengals, having like won a playoff game the previous season. Like they were fully in contention for the number one seed. Like Trevor Lawrence was the top most metrics, and he's just been terrible since then. I think my read is like this is a defense that's overachieving. I think they're like decently well coached. Getting Brian Thomas going is obviously huge, but like you're only going to go as far as your quarterback's going, and I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that guy. I think he's kind of somewhere in that, like he'll have seasons in the range of like 10 to 25th best quarterback, and it's just not a Super Bowl team, maybe a fringe playoff team.
Yeah, some interest in Travis Hunter in this game too. He had an 88%, I believe it was 88% route share last week. It seems like the Jaguars are kind of pushing him more into a full-time receiving role. Liam Cohen this week was like, we got to do a better job of making him the number one read on some of these plays and not have all his production be as much kind of scheme stuff around the line of scrimmage. So I think there's a chance that this is the kind of Travis Hunter big receiving game as well.
And if you guys aren't following at Linsey _, go do it. That's where you're going to get this same game parlay and pretty much every other banger winner of the Ryan Flournoy ladders. Like that's where those come out. So make sure you guys are following Ben on Twitter there.
The Hunter Long reception ladder was a dud last week. I'm sitting here watching the games, getting excited when Johnny Munt catches a pass, thinking it's Hunter Long. So that one did not go quite as well as Ryan Flournoy. Mason, you mentioned you're coming back to this Falcons 49ers game. What do you got?
Yeah, so we're going to lean in double. I love the money line, and that's sort of where I'm going to go with the safety net. I'm going to probably play them at plus points. I'm going to play them at the money line, and I'm also going to play them on this same game here. We're going to slide the line a little bit over for them to cover -2.5. I'm going to take Michael Penix Jr. plus 300 passing yards and Bijan Robinson plus 70 receiving yards. This is 35-1. And really, I mean, it does go back to we were a little bit more thin picking on the props market with a lot of injury news. Not very many were out, so there were some limited options, but I do really like the play here potentially. So the correlation here is between the big game outputs from Penix and big receiving days from Robinson. If your running back is gashing teams with yards after the catch, it makes sense that your quarterback is going to reap some of the rewards off of that. But when we do look at what Penix's output has been in games, he hasn't had a game over 200 yards where Robinson didn't exceed 60. So I think that when we see this potential here and what they like to do with Robinson in this offense, they don't just run him out of the backfield. They put him in slot. They put him in really weird wide alignments. And when we talked about this defense isn't going to have Fred Warner, I think that you're going to see a lot of very creative looks with how they get Bijan Robinson the ball. And I think you're going to see plays where he's out in the slot, where they motion him to the slot, where he's in a running back deep but wide slot type of alignment. And what we've seen in terms of his ability as a receiver and sort of his target share has been quite a bit. He's got the second most targets on the team. He has 30 targets, which is third among running backs, third in receptions, third in yards per route run at 2.5, second in explosive receiving plays. So I think you're definitely going to see a lot of usage from this guy. And I mean, I think they're going to be able to exploit them on the ground, but I really like what we're going to potentially get here as, Bijan Robinson is just electric. He can really we were talking about this when we hit this same game parlay for Atlanta. I think it was in week 4. But it's sort of a similar thing. Like Bijan is able to take the ball a long way out of the catch making guys miss and just really busting teams open. He was electric last week, and I think he's going to again be, the centerpiece of this offense. Atlanta's figured it out that they need to feed this guy. They need to run pretty much everything through him, and they're going to succeed, and they're going to live and die by that. So now a lot of good players we already talked about, but I think Bijan Robinson obviously the best among them, and he's going to be incredible. Some of the fumbling issues have knocked him just a little bit, but I don't think that that's going to be a consistent issue. It's not necessarily something that we see all the time from him, just as of recently. So I think you're going to really see him be able to erupt in this game against, as we talked about, Judah, one of the worst defenses in the NFL when they don't have Fred Warner. So
yeah. And I think it's great also in the sense of if Michael Penix is getting to 300 yards with the concentration of touches in Atlanta, it almost has to be from a big Bijan Robinson catch. And I think they're obviously, as you talked about, there are good reasons to think that might be coming. But I think this is a great shout.
Yeah, and last week, I don't have the numbers pulled, but anecdotally, with Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod out, the Falcons were doing some more stuff, getting Algier and Bijan on the field together and lining up Bijan at wide receiver, whether in the slot or out wide. So that's another thing. Ray McLeod was a DNP on Thursday. Darnell Mooney's been limited all week, so I guess worth monitoring that. But even if he plays, Bijan has shown, especially against zone defenses, that where he can catch the ball with some space and get upfield, he has high ceiling as a receiver at the running back position.
And it's funny because Dalton talked previously about how they were tipping their pitches with, lining up under center or lining up in the gun or whatever they're doing. I'd say lean into it almost a little bit. And if you're not going to be handing Bijan the ball, go ahead and line him up out wide and let's get him the touch out there. Let's really, evolve what this offense can look like in trying to get him the ball.
And we'll close it out with Judah. What are you looking at this week?
Yeah, I'm going with the Carson Wentz revenge game. It's really, I think, a Justin Jefferson play primarily. The SGP is Wentz 300, Justin Jefferson 150 in Minnesota to win. I think a key piece to this is going to be the health of Jalen Carter. I think this is a really, really different defense for Philadelphia with or without him. But the kind of strength of Minnesota first off is getting back a couple offensive linemen, which I think is huge for anyone and certainly for Carson Wentz. But the weakness of this team is on the interior. And if Jalen Carter is there, I think that's going to be a major problem. If not, I think this is a spot where the Minnesota offensive line should be able to hold the Philly defense at bay. And I think this is an overrated Philly defense. We talked about Jackson Dart was just kind of eviscerating them. They play the most single coverage of any team in the NFL. There is no one in the NFL who can guard Justin Jefferson. Maybe they have Quinyon Mitchell following him around. It's not as though Quinyon Mitchell is having a dominant season. He's at full practice. I assume he's going to play. I don't know the kind of full health of his hamstring, but I don't think it's really relevant. They're still going to move Jefferson around the formation, and this is a kind of matchup I think he wins, in addition to the fact that this is a Philadelphia team that, contrary to last year, this was a team that did not allow deep attempts. That was their thing. They did not allow deep attempts. They did not allow explosive plays. Right now, they have the highest deep attempt percentage in the NFL, and teams are consistently attacking them downfield. That's exactly what Carson Wentz wants to do. We know who he's going to go to. That's Justin Jefferson. And obviously, 150 yards is a huge number. Jefferson's actually gotten close to that the last couple of weeks. But we're betting on a couple of bombs here, which I think have a better chance of happening when the offensive line can hold up in a kind of single coverage matchup where Justin Jefferson should be able to win against a defense that is filtering passes deep. If Wentz and Jefferson are connected on some deep bombs, I think this is a spot where Minnesota is far exceeding expectations and not the other way around.
Yeah, the Vikings coming off the bye a lot healthier in general. It looks like Blake Cashman's been a full participant the last couple of weeks. He's a big piece for their defense. You get Donovan Jackson back to full participant. You get Michael Jurgens back. Brian O'Neill's been limited participant. Andrew Van Ginkel has been limited participant. There's a chance they get a lot of these guys who have been out, specifically on the offensive line back, which is obviously big. I do think Jalen Carter is going to play. He said he's probably going to play. The
The thing that concerns me there is he went from a full participant to a limited participant Thursday. Obviously could be maintenance related, but that's never a good sign.
No, generally not. And I think I'm generally with you. Like, I will not be tailing. I've self-imposed an Eagles ban on myself. Like, if I could physically do it in the sportsbook apps for Eagles games specifically, I might. Just Rams against the Eagles, Bucks against the Eagles, and betting on the Eagles against the Giants. I cannot get this team right. So I'm not tailing you, but I think you're right. So, which is probably a bad sign for you.
Great case.
That's all we got this week. Any closing thoughts from anyone on other spots?
No, I think we did a pretty decent job covering a bunch of the board, even in spots like talking about the game. Also, there are a lot of weather stuff, and when I said no, I lied. I actually do. I want to talk about the Colts again.
No, let's do it.
I think this is a Chargers offense which was able to hide the fact that also contingent on Joe Alt. I think did return in some capacity to practice, but that was also part of the plan. Not sure whether he's going to play. I think anytime you're not playing a disaster of a run defense, like you're just forced into any pure drop back situations. We even saw it in a small sample on the last drive. It worked out for him because Herbert worked some magic, but like the offensive line just can't hold up. And Jalen Phillips was getting pressure on every play in that last drive in obvious passing spots. And I think that's just not a sustainable way to run your offense. And the Colts, a lot of value in this matchup is how good the Chargers defense has been. But like by every account, this is a Colts team that is just going to move the ball on anyone. And I kind of take that in this interaction. I take the Colts offense over the Chargers defense. Tyler Warren's been a revelation. With Jonathan Taylor healthy, the offensive line relatively healthy. Josh Downs might not play, of course, but like they still have a lot of depth. I'm kind of sneakily hoping that AD Mitchell gets another chance, another run here, because I think he's an ultra talented guy, even if he really did burn me against the Rams. And obviously this is a secondary that's bleeding, but I think that like if this pass rush has any opportunity, and certainly if they're in a good game state, like they can take advantage. And I don't think the Chargers, like the pass protection is just so bad. Like starting Bobby Hart at right tackle just can't happen in 2025. The guy hadn't played in 3 years and was like the owner of like a 22 PFF grade. Getting away with a win while starting Bobby Hart is truly some miraculous work.
Yeah. Also supports Cleveland -2.5. Go ahead and do it. that Dolphins team, not great.
And I think another point that to be made with that Colts game particularly is I think you're right. Like this Chargers offense can't get pushed into positions where they have to do straight dropbacks, and I think another play there is that they want to keep the ball away from the Colts offense that has just been so electric. Now, if they're going to be able to do that is another question, but I think that you're going to see some pretty solid Kamani Vidal volume numbers. I think you can get his carries at 13.5, and that's probably a place that they have to have some sort of success. Now, it's one thing to do that last week, but it's another one to come in and, do it against the Colts. And, the Colts have been a little bit lower on the rushing success rate numbers, but that's going to be something they really have to sort of have a change in identity to trying to run the ball a lot better and run the ball a lot more in order to have some success behind this offensive line right now. So, I'm right there with you, though. I think the Colts are a really good value on that one.
And on that note, we'll close it down. So like I said, the top PFF Plus subscription gets you access to premium stats, premium articles, all our fantasy tools, our betting tools like the player prop tool in the PFF app. A lot of good data to dive into and help you make smart decisions on some of these bets. For Judah Fork Gang and Mason Cameron, we'll be back week 8. Thanks for listening, everyone.